Welcome to WWJD on Franchise Sports Media. I'm Joe Arrigo. Man, it's Green and Gold Fever 2.0. With me tonight are the same guys that were with me last week. I'm going to tell you why I'm superstitious. I believe if it worked, we're going to keep running this. So let me welcome FSM's Lorenzo, Reyna, Big Zoe Huddle. Throwing up
and you got my last name right in my Denzel voice, my man.
My man. And then we got my guy from Game On Wisconsin, Jacob Westendorf. What's up, Brody?
It's good to be here, guys. It's a championship week, and after this week, we're flying all the way to Tampa, yelling green and yellow.
Oh, hell yeah. So we'll get to the song.
I got VIP invite, right?
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, you're rolling with us. Look it. I believe in superstition. If this worked last week, then if they win again this week, we got to do it again. I mean, we just got to keep the train rolling. So let's start with last week's game though against the Rams. Lorenzo, you did a great article on Franchise Sports Media with Zoe Huddle with the matchups on the perimeter. And you broke it down from every game. The number one matchup was Davante Adams and Jalen Ramsey. And before we were talking on air, before we went live, we were having just pre-show talking. You brought up, start with you, Lorenzo. You brought up we're talking about elite receivers, and I had heard Brady Quinn at NFL Network say on Monday that an elite receiver has to catch for 1,000 yards. He said the Rams didn't have an elite receiver because they didn't have 1,000-yard receiver. And for me, it was like Davante Adams for 2 years caught like 998 and 999. He was like a yard or two away a couple of times. He was still elite, and one of those years he was injured. And then we brought up the play with Allen Lazard, which we'll get to in a second. But what did you see specifically, Zoe, when you were watching the game and it was Ramsey on Adams one-on-one?
Got to start with that motion play. That was superbly well designed. It honestly, guys, it reminded me of how Steve Sarkisian used Devontae Smith in the national championship game. He ran that same motion play, and you saw like the confusion on Jalen Ramsey's face. Like normally, like when it comes to plays like that, a switch call is made, usually by the safety. Well, it's clear to me that the Rams were not prepared for that play, and it's just so brilliantly drawn up by Matt LaFleur and also Nathaniel Hackett being able to catch the Rams napping on that particular play. And it's just incredibly smart that for a guy like Davante Adams and for the coaches in general, they're not putting Davante in the same spot. They're moving him around, a la a queen piece on the chessboard. And as you guys know, the queen is the most powerful piece on that chessboard. It can move anywhere. And the Packers are starting to understand that with a guy like Davante Adams, you can move him around anywhere and just do damage with him.
What did you see, Jake?
It was beautiful. And I'm glad that you brought up Nathaniel Hackett because he's really the one that draws up their gold zone offense and putting all that stuff together. So obviously the brilliance of Matt LaFleur and Nathaniel Hackett and just the execution and the ability of, we talked about it last week, trying to get, how do you get Davante away from Jalen Ramsey? Because obviously if you just isolate him and go one-on-one, it's going to be 50-50. But to get Davante Adams, you want a higher percentage from the goal line than a 50-50 ball. And I thought the Packers did a really good job of getting him away. And that was what we talked about last week, right? How do you get Adams free on third downs, gold zone opportunities, touchdown type of opportunities? I think those are just things that Green Bay has done so well on all season. And it doesn't get talked about a whole lot just because the brilliance of Aaron Rodgers, it's just like, that is like the all encompassing thing, right? Everybody just says, well, why is the Packers red zone offense so good? Well, they have Aaron Rodgers. Well, there's some truth to that. Obviously Rodgers made some magic later in the game with his touchdown run, but there's some coaching and there's some play design. And Rodgers has talked about, how they've been able to do some things schematically in that spot. And I thought they did an excellent job of freeing up Adams for the game's first touchdown.
That touchdown, the timing was perfect. I mean, to really send him in motion to go 3-by-1 to bring him back across. And that really, and we talked about, and I seen the clip on Twitter when we were talking about the NFL films, what they did for sounds, but not sounds of the game.
That's the NBA.
Yes, NBA.
Turning point.
Turning point. That's one.
Jalen Ramsey straight said, like, hey, I can't stick him. Like he said off the rip. And what I seen from that, and I was watching that matchup real closely for obvious reasons. I seen really from that point on, Jalen Ramsey get frustrated. There was more than a few times where he's up in press man or they're running some type of combo coverage, and he opens his gate so quick because he doesn't know what's freed up a slant from Devontae Adams. Or you even seen it with the little bubble screen to Adams. It was like all of a sudden he was caught flat-footed and he kind of just watched him go right by him. So for me, I was really intrigued by that because I think from that point on, Ramsey knew what Adams told him was, I'm not the normal guy you go up against. I want you to follow me. I want you to show me why you're better than the guy that straps up for us that gave -3 yards in receiving last game.
And Joe, that's that Bay Area Fresno State talk from Devontae Adams.
Yeah, that's that bread he's got tatted right there.
Yeah.
So one of the things like and Jacob brought up in pre-show, Adams makes everybody else around him better by just being on the field and it frees them up. And yesterday I interviewed Cam Morrell. Cam played in the NFL for almost a decade, Fresno State alum, played in the Super Bowl. And we were talking about the play with Allen Lazard. And he brought up, he told me, he goes, Joe, when you seen Rodgers point, that wasn't pointing for him to go to the seam. That's a run call. That's he's trying to point him that you pick up that safety. So it was actually a dummy call from Rodgers because he goes, Joe, that's the exact same play they ran in the first half when Lazard dropped the ball. And he was in that run game and he was hitting them so hard, coming up blocking that when he did that, the safety thought, okay, they're going to run this. I'm coming down. And from that point on, Lazard just ran right by him. And he goes, that's Peyton Manning-esque from Rodgers. And he goes, and he literally said to him, Aaron Rodgers is the best quarterback to ever play the game.
Yeah, and you look at it, I mean, they run a lot of variations of that stuff, and Lazard is probably their best blocker as a receiver. They bring him in motion a ton to just dig people out in the running game, and you see all the time how they do that kind of stuff. And it was perfect because it was executed perfectly, and I had a really good view of this. The offense was going away from where I was at. So I'm watching as this play comes in. I kind of like to watch where the safety's at. Those are the first two things I try and locate as to what the defense is kind of expecting. And the Rams were playing a lot of their quarters coverage throughout the course of the game. But in this particular instance, their safeties had started to cheat up a little bit. And as soon as Rodgers turned his back, their safeties, I call it the oh shit turn and run, because he ran up and then it was oh shit. And he's turning and chasing Lazard. And by the time that was gone, Rodgers looked up and it was just a flick of the wrist. And all I'm thinking as the ball's in the air is, okay, that's a touchdown. Just catch it. Like all I'm asking at this point is just catch it, because
Rodgers, it's like when that smirk though. That's like that silent assassin smirk right there. That's what I loved about that play.
Oh yeah, Aaron is one of those dudes that when you see that smile and he's on your team, you're like, yeah, I love that. But if you're like a Bears fan, you're like, man, forget that guy. He sucks. I hate that.
It's like I was like when they showed it, he kind of was like. It was just kind of like at that point you're like, this really has this team we talked about the special feeling, but it just shows how much fun they're having. And I went back to I talked to Jarius Wynn earlier in the week, former Packer, played on the Super Bowl team, and I said, Jay Wynn, like, what did you think? What do you think with this team? And he goes, bro, real talk, I've seen that look from Aaron Rodgers before. He goes, I think I'm gonna tweet it out, but I've seen that look before, and that's not a good look to have if you're an opposing fan, because that's the look like I'm finna put this belt on and carry out a couple trophies while I'm at it.
Or do this.
Get crowned.
It's that what is it, the LeBron Game 6 look, or like the Jordan when he's chewing his gum kind of thing. I mean, there's looks.
Kobe when he bites his jersey.
When the jaw would come out. Yeah.
That thing, yeah. I mean, it's a tough look right now. Tampa Bay, I think you're getting a different version of the quarterback on Sunday afternoon.
Go ahead, Zoe.
Yeah, on that note, Jacob, like going back to the Rams safeties, like the moment I saw them creeping up, that to me just tipped the favor into Rodgers' hand right there. And like I've seen this before in the times that I'm able to watch Green Bay games out on the West Coast. The moment you try to bring your safeties forward, it's like that's when A-Rod starts salivating, knowing that he's going to beat you deep. And you saw it on that play when beating Troy Hill, like, I love the guy. He's an 805 guy, but he had a horrendous game in this particular playoff game. He was beat on that Lazard touchdown. He was also beat on 2 other deep balls as well.
Oh, he was beat on right before the first half ended. Devontae Adams. I mean, he hit him with a little. I think it was a little sluggo route. I mean,
Yeah,
and
early in the game,
and it was just like, damn, like it. You seen it, and I think really when I felt the game was, I'm gonna say well within hand. If you're a Packers fan, was the first play of the third quarter when you see Aaron Jones go 60 plus yards and just run through a Rams defense that was getting punched in the mouth repeatedly, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. I mean, Aaron Donald, you don't see him lose his cool. Elton Jenkins had him out of his mind, whether he's hurt or not. Like, Cam brought up a good point yesterday. He goes, Joe, he had the shot to feel good. He wasn't feeling anything. That was just ineffectiveness on Aaron Donald's part. He goes, Mindry may have played a role, but Elton Jenkins is a man, and what he did to him, you don't see guys do to Aaron Donald. That's frustration.
And Joe, I'll add to that. So, like, I was reading a previous article regarding Jenkins' game. Jenkins, here's something that we often don't talk about when it comes to breaking down offensive line, particularly guards, the cerebral side. There were instances where the Rams were trying to twist and stunt. Jenkins identified that quickly, and it made a beeline toward the stunt man and took him out of the play completely. It led to a pancake block.
Yeah, and he might be Jair Alexander is a pick from Brian Gutekunst, and there's a legitimate argument that Elton Jenkins is his best pick. Like that is, and that's not even a slight to Alexander. It's just it speaks to the magnitude of impact that Jenkins has had. I do want to go back to your guys' thought on that deep ball too. Something I think that we give credit to there is Matt LaFleur, because something about him that I've learned over the last 25 games or however many it's been, he's not afraid to win the game. And I know that sounds stupid to say that because you're like, well, duh, what coach isn't afraid to win the game? By that, what I mean is when it's very easy, and it would have been very easy for LaFleur to just take the air out of the ball and try to keep running the ball and run. And they probably could have succeeded doing that because they were, like Joe mentioned, ramming the ball down their throat. But instead, it's 25-18. The game's still hanging in the balance a little bit. Play action fake. Let's go for the jugular and let's go for it right now. I give him a ton of credit for calling that play in that spot because it would have been very easy to say, let's grind the clock and see if Jared Goff can beat us, because that's a bet that, and I'm not here to criticize the former coach because I'm a bit of an apologist for him, if you will, and I'll defend him until my dying day. That being said, it's something the former coach would have done and taken the air out of the ball. And it's a bet that he made far too many times, and one, frankly, that he lost too many times. That's why the Packers haven't been, one of the reasons why the Packers haven't been back to the Super Bowl in 10 years. In another unspoken, I guess, I mean, maybe fans we talk about a little bit more. And as a media person, I think it's something that we probably should talk more, is Billy Turner. I mean, Billy Turner coming in and playing right tackle, then coming in and playing left tackle with Bakhtiari out for the remainder of the postseason. When you see that guy, you haven't missed a beat. He's protected Aaron Rodgers' blind side, and you could make the argument that outside of Zadarius Smith and Adrian Amos, Turner's the best signing besides those two. I mean, President Smith, had a great year last year, but he kind of dipped off this year. But Billy Turner's had a hell of a 2 years with Green Bay on a relatively manageable contract. Yeah, and in a year where after last season, we were kind of talking about, man, when can they get out of that contract? Is this somebody is he going to be around after this season? Now it's like you have to include him in your plans for 2021. He has been that good. He's rock solid as a left tackle. He's been rock solid, I should say, as a left tackle. He was really good at right tackle. He's played right guard. His teammates, to a man, speak about how important he's been to their culture change within their locker room. He's been very important to their success. And he's somebody that if Green Bay wins the Super Bowl, the main storyline is going to be Aaron Rodgers. That's just the way that we do things. But Billy Turner should be one of the first names out of your mouth when you talk about the reason, because David Bakhtiari, if we had done a ranking before the season and said, who are the most important players on this Packers team, who can't get injured kind of thing, Aaron Rodgers is one, no question. David Bakhtiari was probably number 2. I mean, that's a Hall of Fame, at minimum, all pro
type 3. And it's the lowest he would be is 3, but you're 100% right.
So when he gets injured before the Bears game, you're talking about a potentially season-changing injury. And through 2 games, albeit only 2 games, and he's got another stiff test this weekend with JPP and Shaq Barrett. I'm not going to say you haven't noticed, but you really haven't, that Bakhtiari is not in the game. The protection has been phenomenal. The Packers have obviously done some things a little different without Bakhtiari. You have to. But Turner should absolutely be one of the first names out of your mouth if this team wins a championship, as one of the big reasons why.
Absolutely.
And people underestimate the importance of a blindside protector. Like on the offensive line, I feel like there's 2 very, very important positions that you always have to build around. Your first is your left tackle, because you always want to keep the quarterback's jersey clean. Your next one is your center. But, I mean, Bakhtiari, I was very impressed with this game, especially and he's going against Khalil Mack. They're in the same division, so he's already battle-tested in that regard. But now his backup comes in Turner, and it's like, it's almost as if Green Bay just hasn't missed a beat. And it's why I feel like heading into this weekend, Green Bay has I think, honestly, the best offensive line unit in this championship game, or in the championship games in general.
Well, to your point about Khalil Mack, for instance, a lot of times the Bears keep him on the opposite side, and he's against Billy Turner. So, I mean, that's a credit to Billy Turner and Wagner, who's also at again, getting him the day that free agency started at the price they got him at. And albeit he was coming off a year where he was, a year or 2 where he was injured with Detroit. It's another guy that just really held it down. So the offensive line in general, Lucas Patrick, I don't know what happened with him from the move to left guard to right guard, but whatever it was, his play has been elevated at right guard. At left guard, he was trash. When they move him to right guard, he's played out of his mind too. The Green Bay offensive line has shown really since that Tampa Bay game that okay, enough is enough. We're here to play, keep 12, cleaning up right, open these running holes for 3 really, really good running backs.
So, Joe and Jacob, I'm going to pass a very key stat heading into this Sunday involving the Green Bay offensive line. The Buccaneers got 21 quarterback pressures in that meeting against Green Bay. If they could downsize that number, if they could at least cut that number in half, advantage Green Bay.
Yeah, I agree with you. And something else from that game to consider is, in that game, Bakhtiari he had a chest injury. And Rick Wagner came in that game essentially cold. And there's a huge difference between practicing at that position all week versus coming into a game just right out of the gate and just be like, okay, you're the left tackle now. Big difference there. And obviously they didn't handle the blitz very well. But the other thing to add to that, Aaron Rodgers has not been sacked on a blitz since that game. That was in mid-October. Yeah. So I think Green Bay has gotten better from that. And something we talked about on one of my podcasts earlier was how the illusion of complexity. That's with Zach Jacobson and Aaron Ellis. Yeah, it's what the Packers call their offense. So we thought it was a great podcast title. So that's what we called it. But we talked about how this team is battle tested, and they've gone through some of those tougher losses that maybe if you go back to 2011, for example, they didn't. And if you go back to that 2011 season where the Packers went 15-1 and damn near ran the table, they had the one game against Kansas City, and then they had the one close game against the Giants. Otherwise, it was ass whipping after ass whipping, and they never really had to face any sort of adversity throughout the season. Whereas this year, they have. They had that game against Tampa that did not go well. They lost against Indianapolis. They had a really bad loss at home against Minnesota. They had a game against Jacksonville where they should have probably won by 20 points. They only won by 6. You talk about some of these other games where they've had to close them out. I think that's good for a team. And those are things we don't talk about, because after the game, the only thing you're talking about is, oh, they barely beat a shitty team. It's like, well, sometimes that's good for a team, though, because that's how you build. Aaron Rodgers talks about this all the time, the team's character and how the team builds throughout the course of a season and how they get better from point A to point B, to the point now where I think this is the first time in a long time, probably since 2014, where I feel like this team is playing its best football going into the most important game of the season.
I agree 100%. Real quick, there's some breaking news that's just happening in college football. Pac-12 Commissioner Larry Scott is
I
stepping
read
down
that.
as of June 30th.
I read that.
And that's huge for Pac-12 fans. So if you're on the West Coast, that's good news. But this is about the Packers. But I just want to put that out there as we're live on the show. So when I look at this Bucs team, if you look at the numbers against the Saints, it was pretty much equal. It took 4 turnovers on the plus side of the field for the Bucs for them to win that game. When you look at the game against Green Bay back in October, it took turnovers, uncharacteristic turnovers from Aaron Rodgers. He doesn't throw picks when he's getting blitzed. He threw 2 that game. So it took uncharacteristic play from Aaron Rodgers. And really just it was, as Jacob said, it was like the Murphy's Law game. Anything that could go wrong did go wrong. And you have was it Levante David or was it
Devin White?
Devin White.
Stroking some fire, talking about they didn't deserve to be on the same field as us.
Bulletin board material. I
don't think you need it at this point. It's Super Bowl or bust, but it's a little something to keep in your back pocket. I think this is a different Green Bay team, and I think what they learned is they're not going to try to run the ball outside. They're not going to those tosses and those. They're going to run the ball at you. They're going to play big boy football like they did against the Rams. And you've seen all the running backs from Aaron Jones to AJ Dillon to the IE's own Jamal Williams running uphill, downhill, in between, really between the A and the B gaps, beating the crap out of a Rams D line, which is better than Tampa Bay's D line, in my opinion. I think that's the key to victory this week. One of them.
And keep this in mind too for anybody watching this. The Rams had the league's best defense, obviously. Green Bay still put 32 on the league's best defense. Still got past 450 total yards against the league's best defense. So all this talk, well, Tampa Bay knows how to force turnovers. Look what they did to Drew Brees. Well, Green Bay's already prepared for that because they faced the Rams defense. So,
and in a game where they played their offense, in my opinion, a B to B plus kind of game, like it wasn't their A game. They missed a couple things that they could have had over 500 yards and a 40 burger. If Rodgers hits MVS on that little stutter go that we were talking about earlier.
Yep.
I mean, that's a 90-yard touchdown. And that's something that they missed.
Lazard's drop too is another
70-yard
touchdown or so.
Yep. I mean, those are big ones. You talk about that. You were talking about running downhill. I think that's a key because I don't think it's a coincidence or an accident that the first time these two teams met. Now, granted, one of these runs came in garbage time, but Green Bay's best runs came Jamal Williams, downhill run, 25 yards. AJ Dillon, downhill run, 20-plus yards. That run came after the game was out of hand. But that being said, the Packers have done more to prepare for that. And last week, like you mentioned, it wasn't the cute wide zone type stuff. It was duo gaps, A gap powers, B gap powers, just downhill running down your throat. And are they going to run? Are they going to run for 200 yards again? Probably not. But can they stay patient enough to where instead of averaging 0 to 1 yards a carry, which I think the last time they played, Jones had like 10 carries for 19 yards or something like that. Can they get it to where does Jones have 15 carries for 65 yards? If you do that, then you keep them honest enough to where these linebackers have to stay honest in the play action game, and you slow down this pass rush a little bit, which you mentioned that the Rams have a better defensive line, but the Bucs certainly have a good group of players up there with old friend and Dominic.
They have veteran guys like Sue and Vita Vey, who I know pretty well from playing in the Pac-12. So,
well, where the Rams have a better D line, Tampa Bay's linebackers are way better than the Rams.
Yep.
Speak to those linebackers, and that's where I think the elements come into play. And looking back at that game against Tampa in October, the first quarter, Green Bay did what they wanted. I mean, it was 10-0, 14-0, something like that.
10-0.
21 plays to Tampa Bay's like 3 or something. Like they were dominant in that first quarter. Roger said they never got into a rhythm, and I understand that. And you look at some of the dudes that were on the field. Darius Shepard caught a pass from him. Equanimous St. Brown, it was his first game back. Like Alan Lazard didn't play, And it was Devontae's first game back from a hamstring injury. And watching this game over, my guy Peter Bukowski pointed this out, is you could see like he doesn't have that same burst off the line of scrimmage. He wasn't he was good enough to play, but not 100%. He's 100% now. And this Tampa Bay secondary is torchable. And I know Carlton Davis has talked a lot this week calling Michael Thomas slant boy, which was funny. But if you can beat Jalen Ramsey, who can't you beat?
Exactly.
Joe, that was a prime opportunity for you to say Jair Alexander.
I was going to because he can't be Jair because Ja Money's on Ja Island, which is located in northeast Wisconsin. So I mean, like he lives there already. He doesn't have to beat him on it. But let's talk about the secondaries. I love talking about secondaries. Carlton Davis, Mike Thomas is a different guy, and you can get in his head. I mean, his own teammate got in his head and got him kicked out of practice. You're not getting in Devontae's head. In fact, I seen on the clip thing where LaFleur tells Rodgers, "Hey man, look, just make sure he doesn't do something stupid out there." And Rodgers goes, "Nah, this is gonna get him even more ready," or something to that effect. Like the more you come up, and that's that dog in him. No pun intended or pun intended. So I'm not really. I think even with that, I think Devontae put something on his IG story today, and it was a picture of just somebody going kind of looking down with his eyes closed, like, "Here we go." And this is Aaron Rodgers every time they're asking him about Tom Brady, and he added Aaron Rodgers with it, so you know that there's a little bit of like,
"Yep,
all right, enough. Enough. Let's go." And I think if they were ready to go today, I love it. But Green Bay secondary is going to have a challenge this week. Chris Godwin's a real guy. He's a real dude, and I'm pretty sure. I mean, I know Ja doesn't move around too much, but him and Godwin's going to be a good matchup. King and Mike Evans should be a pretty good matchup. I think where Green Bay has to get some help, and he's not, if he plays, and he's not the same guy he once was, but he can still get 9 to 20 and move the changes. Antonio Brown in the slot, if provided that he plays. Counter move is today Green Bay had their old, I don't know what to call them. I don't want to say son, just a familiar face back in Green Bay with Tramon Williams. Played last week with the Ravens, but they released him. So he's eligible to sign right away. Knows the defense from his days with Penton and being in Green Bay the last couple of years. It'd be an easy transition to bring Tramon back and put him in the slot where he's effective. Jake, let me go to you first. What do you think about Tramon, basically if coming back, if everything goes well? That's what the report said. But what do you think about Tramon coming back potentially and using Tramon this weekend against Tampa?
It's been a move my guy Ross Uglum over at Packer Report's been calling for since week 4. Like, I mean, it's unbelievable to me that he just sat there as long as he did, and they didn't do that, especially when it's clear to me that they don't believe in Josh Jackson and they don't believe in Kadar Holman, because those guys have been healthy scratches the last couple of weeks. And obviously, I mean, they had Kavari Russell, who they promoted from the practice squad, over both of those guys last week. And now, like I mentioned, you're a turned ankle away from starting Kavari Russell, because the Packers, as far as their cornerback depth, there just isn't any at this point. If you're going to have those guys as healthy scratches, bringing Tramon in, I'm not asking him to cover Mike Evans one-on-one. Hell, I'm not even really asking him to cover Antonio Brown one-on-one. If we're doing straight man-to-man coverage, it's Alexander on Mike Evans, King on Godwin, or vice versa, whatever way they want to do that. And then Shannon Sullivan on Brown. And Tramon is playing like that dime back role that Shannon Sullivan played for a lot of last year. And I think that's something that can help this middle of the field defense against guys like Rob Gronkowski and Cameron Brate, some guys that have had some bigger games over the last couple of weeks. And Brady loves those tight ends, and he loves the middle of the field, especially this time of year. I think the big question is, last week when Green Bay went to their dime, which they love, they play it like 60% of the time. Will Redmond is your dime back. And with all due respect to Will Redmond, he's a professional athlete. I would much rather have Tremont Williams as my dime back and let Redmond focus solely on the special teams unit. This to me has been a no-brainer since September. And I just kind of thought that the Packers were waiting for him to maybe be ready kind of thing, maybe not have him play a full 16, but then he signed with the Ravens, and a blessing in disguise. The Ravens cut him for reasons. I personally don't understand it, but kudos. They gave him a chance to potentially come back. Like I said in the Slack chat today for Game On, pull your 38 jerseys out. He's back home. So I hope they get that done and get him a chance. He knows the defense already. He's been here for the last 2 years. And he's
won a Super Bowl.
He broke up the last pass in the Super. Tremont Williams is responsible for me sobbing like a baby as a 19-year-old because he broke up the last pass in Super Bowl 45. And something else I talked about a little bit earlier on the Pack-A-Day podcast was he's seen the highest of the highs because he did that, and also the lowest of the lows because the last touchdown in the debacle that is the 2015 NFC Championship game was caught over Tremont Williams. And I'm not necessarily blaming him on that, so to speak, but he's seen all of that. So what small advantages can you give of hey, Kevin, I know you're struggling a little bit. This guy's got 5 catches for 50 and a touchdown on you, but you got the next one. And I know, because I know how this works and I know how this game works. How much can that work? I don't know. But I think that from a sheer on the field standpoint, he's better than Will Redmond. And if the Bucs are going to go, one of the advantages I think Tampa could have is if Brown can play, if they can go 4 wide with Scotty Miller as their other slot receiver. And that's somebody that I didn't really understand the reason for needing Antonio Brown, if that's the guy who could be there, but they clearly thought they had a need there. So they brought him in, but I think Miller is just as good as those other guys too.
And I feel like in the situation with Tremont, it's like your secondary is already well established with Ja and then Goodwin and all those other guys. So Tremont could still come in, and it's like he's only used in situational purposes, but that already means that the pressure's not fully on him. I mean, he's just there like when Green Bay is in need of something, in need of covering Antonio Brown, or in need of maybe going against Scotty Miller. I'm surprised you didn't bring this stat up, Joe, regarding Ja Alexander. He allowed 1 catch for -3 yards against the Rams.
At the beginning of the show, man.
Jalen allowed 3.
Okay, so let's talk about that right there. Now, first of all, Ja, I salute you, Noop. I tell you, watching him play on Sunday or on Saturday, excuse me, I'm sitting there and I'll share this publicly. I'm not going to share the picture. Jacob, you don't share it because I said it to you. I'm wearing my Ja jersey. Jaleesa's rocking her Ja jersey for the first time. And I literally looked at her and said, he's cut off one side. They're not even looking to throw his way. And every time they did, it was like the fourth quarter when they needed something. It's like, why are you going to try to throw that way now? Like, to me, that's stupid. Like the dude shut down your whole left side of the field. And I got up and did his clamp stance. Your
inner jaw.
It came out, but 1 catch, -3 yards. The first time since 2006, a corner has given up negative yards in a playoff game. I think it goes to show if he was in New York, in LA, a bigger market Green Bay does a great job promoting players. Sometimes it takes them a little longer than what it should, but once they get there, he's earned every bit of what the accolades that he's getting in his time. I mean, he literally, I can make the argument in that draft class. He's the best corner. I think he's the best corner in the NFL. And with Jalen Ramsey, Tre'Davious White, Stephen Gilmore, those are the other 3 guys. That's elite company. And this week, I think he's up to the challenge this week. He's going against legit. I mean, if it's against Godwin, that's a legitimate guy. He's a free agent in here. He wants to make his money, but it's a legitimate guy that can run by you or, be physical against you in the passing game. If you're going against Mike Williams, you're giving up 6-7 inches in height. I mean, that's a matchup that's intriguing. But let Antonio Brown get out there. Let me see him against AB, because I think that's a matchup where AB, he's not the same guy, but I think that he still carries that gravitas where it's like, yeah, I clamped him up too. I'm clamping clamp, and it's a done deal. So I was gonna get to Ja Money and his -3. I mean, we had some time to go, but I got no problem talking about it.
It's
you,
just
you gotta flash that little new for. I think I'm doing it right? Yeah.
You gotta make the
It
diamond.
reminds me of San Jose State. It reminds me.
It's funny to me that Sean McVay is, I call him boy wonder, because I think McVay is a really good coach, but there were people putting him on the same level as like Bill Belichick after his second season. And I was just like, I'm not sure. Like, I'm not even, is he better than Kyle Shanahan? I don't think so. Is he better than Andy Reid? I don't think so. Like, I mean, there's guys obviously on these lists that I don't think McVay, and Matt LaFleur, is he better than Matt LaFleur? I don't think so. You keep going down that list. Obviously we can keep going, but that's kind of my running joke for McVay. But I remember tweeting, doesn't Boy Wonder know not to throw screens at Jair? Like, that's something that's been evident since his rookie season. You throw a screen, maybe Jair's highlight on his highlight reel that it would lead with is that screen against Minnesota where he just destroys both receivers. And like, that's why he gave up -3 yards, because they ran that play and he makes a tackle back there. And I'm like, you may as well have taken a knee. It was a better play to take a knee than to do that.
A couple plays before that, the Rams were running. They went. I think they went. They left one side of the field. His side of the field was empty, and so he came down, and it was almost like they could have ran some type of boot or play action, because he came crashing hard. Like hard on the outside. It was like, I'm watching. I'm like, damn, if they bounce it out, he's totally crashed. There's no containment. But they run the opposite way, and he damn near got there too. He got there just a little bit late. It was just maybe like a 2-yard gain. But he's so aggressive, like he wants to make a play. And I think that's the thing. That's the thing about Jair Alexander, is just like, and I'll use Eric Bieniemy as an example. When he was a player, he wanted the ball in his hands at the end of the game. As a play caller, he's a ballsy play caller. He's best players. He wants them to have the ball in their hands. Same thing with Jair Alexander. He wants to have and make a play when it's time to make a play. And
that's what you want out of your corners, right?
Out of your superstar players, that's what you want.
Mm-hmm.
You want your Jair Alexander's, Zadarius Smith, Kenny Clark, Rashawn Gary, Darnell Savage, Adrian Amos, Chris Barnes. I mean, you want those guys on the defense side of the ball wanting to make a play. And they were this weekend. I mean, across the board, they have done I didn't realize this. And I don't know how it didn't dawn on me. As Raider Rich is giving us shit, but whatever, Richie, it's okay.
I mean, hey, are the Raiders, are they still in the NFL? I need to know.
I kind of covered them. As I kind of covered them.
I mean, so are you covering an NFL team? You can answer the question for me, I suppose.
Rich is gonna get going. I love it. But I didn't realize that Green Bay's defense was 9th in the NFL. Like, I thought it was like 19th. I thought it was middle of the pack, but to be 9th.
If I remember correctly, so I believe Tampa Bay's pass defense is 19th overall, even with all the turnovers they've had.
That's kind of their saving grace, has been their turnovers.
Yeah.
Like, even if you look at Sunday, like, they couldn't do anything. I shouldn't say they couldn't do anything, but they struggled to slow down New Orleans. Really, I mean, the entire game changed when Jared Cook fumbled, because the Saints on that drive are looking at 23-13, maybe 27, depending on, how the rest of that drive goes. But that was a 3rd down conversion. Cookie fumbles, and it's 20-20 in a blink. And Tom Brady's playoff horseshoe up his ass strikes again.
Well,
and although I'll go back a little bit further. So, like the Sean Murphy bunting interception, I felt like that was the play that signified that could set the tone for the Buccaneers. And the fact that it was played perfectly. I mean, Drew had no protection at all, not even the blocking back, because Kamara ended up rolling out as a receiver. And then there's enough penetration to where Drew goes from the 3-step drop, ends up rolling back 3 yards, and then he fires it to a heavily covered Michael Thomas. That could have been the play that may have taken Thomas out of that game as well, mentally.
Yep. And to answer your question, Tampa Bay is 21st in the NFL in passing yards per game.
Okay,
So,
okay, that's what it was.
Well, and I look at it like this too. They struggled against a New Orleans team whose quarterback played with a torn rotator cuff, a torn fascia fasciitis in his foot, and 11 broken ribs with the collapsed lung that he all had this season. But the rotator cuff and the plantar fasciitis was during that game. So, I mean, Aaron Rodgers, last time I checked, he's still squatting 435 or whatever it is, whatever he's maxed out at. And
Joe, how much can you squat?
Oh, I don't know now. Back in the day, that was the only thing I liked to do when I lifted was squat. What about you?
I was over 425 from what I remember.
I did 505 once as a senior in high school. And then after I got out of high school, I was like, I don't need to do legs anymore. I don't feel the need to hobble around every day anymore.
Yeah. I just ride the bike. That's my leg day.
I did have the squat record at Upland High School my senior year.
Oh. So you're a legend at Upland, right?
No, not at all. Man, the legends at Upland is Orlando Huff, the Helinski, Tyler Helinski.
Helinski, yeah, rest in peace. God rest his soul.
Yeah, those guys, Jaquan Brackenridge, Tyron Brackenridge,
Justin the Flo brothers in general.
Flo brothers, yeah, like those are the guys. And I know all of them. They're my guys, but I mean, we're all it's you high, baby. So, but anyway, I look at this Bucs team, and at first I was like, oh man, this is gonna be tough because Tom Brady always finds a way. Just there's always some type of for lack of a better term, fuckery that happens with Tom Brady, and
the Tuck rule.
The Tuck rule, the Flake Gate. I mean, Tuck rule. The anniversary was yesterday on the 19th.
And I saw a lot of relentless Raider fans that day on social media.
Yeah. Oh God. But then,
deservedly so.
Yeah. But then, well, Jake's favorite player is Charles Woodson. So I mean, he knows it's a sack too. So
and a fumble, and it was recovered by Bill Romanowski.
Jake. On that note, I'm gonna be right back. I gotta show you something.
So I'll say so. As I was like, and then I called my mom today just to chop it up with her for a little bit, or she called me, and my brother came home, or it was maybe even yesterday, and he goes, Brady's gonna find some way to cheat to get the win. Like that's the attitude that people have when it comes to Tom Brady.
I got his Green Bay jersey hanging up over here. I'm not going to pull the whole frame down, but yeah, Woodson is Charles Woodson, Reggie White. Those are 1 and 2 as far as my favorite players. So
Seawood's my guy too.
I remember when he got drafted, and I was like, oh man, I was really. I mean, at the time, I didn't understand how the draft worked, but I was really hoping the Packers could take him. I think that was the year they took Vonnie Holiday.
Yeah, you're right.
They should have taken Randy Moss.
Randy Moss, yep.
Yeah.
Should we tell that story that I've never really made public, or should we wait for a different time?
You know better. Go ahead.
It's your show.
Show, yeah.
Well, I know, but so I had been on Moss for like 2 years since I have like Randy, like this dude is the next thing, big guy, right? Mm-hmm. And since Sterling Sharp was forced to retire, I was like, Green Bay needs another guy, and it has to be this Moss will never get to him, right? So the draft comes, he starts sliding, and I got one of my best friends, one of childhood friends with me. We're watching the draft. Earlier, when the Lakers drafted Derek Fisher, he got pissed. Now they drafted Kobe, but they drafted Fish as well, and he got pissed. Oh, they could have taken. I go, man, Jerry West drafted him. Be cool. So I'm downstairs. Because we had in a duplex. I'm downstairs and Green Bay's on the clock, and I'm like, oh hell yeah! And Randy Moss is still there. Oh man, I was like, they're taking Moss. Hell yeah! Oh, I was so juiced. And they're like, I went the 20th selection. Green Bay Packers select Vonnie Holiday, defensive end. Before he could hear the college, I threw my soda on the ground. Motherfucking wrong, Wolf. What are you doing? You're an idiot. And then he goes to Minnesota, which made it even worse. Oh, my boy's like, well, Ron Wolf, I'm going to fuck Ron Wolf. And then like about 20 minutes later, I was like, nah, I can't say about Ron Wolf, but damn it, he should have drafted Vonnie Holland or should have drafted Randy Moss. And to
Man,
this day, I stand by that. And I think every Packer fan would agree with me.
Well, and Ron Wolf has said to this day that was his biggest mistake, was not drafting Randy Moss. And then the following year, because they didn't have Randy Moss, what's he do? Antoine Edwards, Fred Vinson, Mike McKenzie, back to back to back, because they came to Lambeau and it was raining. And I remember the Packers never lost at home when Favre was their quarterback, and they torched the Moss, Carter, and Jake Reed. It felt like Cunningham was dropping back and throwing it deep on every play. And it didn't matter if he was covered, he was catching the ball. That Vikings team, I still to this day, if Gary Anderson makes that field goal, they win the Super Bowl by 2 touchdowns.
That was a fire team. That was a dope team.
Man, I'll go as far as saying Randy Moss should have been a Packer 3 times.
I can think of 2. What's the third one?
The draft and twice by trade.
I can think of the first one. What's the second one? The first one is 2007 when he went
was
to
it after the Raiders? Was it after like maybe the Raiders?
The Raiders had an agreement to trade him to Green Bay, but then and it got started. I was at the Senior Bowl when it originally got talked about, and I put it on Packer Chatters. That was one of my first things I did. And everybody was like, no way. All of a sudden it starts to come out. And it's like, yeah, you know what I'm saying? I told y'all. Like I was down there with TQ. So, I mean, so that's how far back we go down to we used to go to Senior Bowl together all the time. So then anyway,
and yo, Brett Favre and Randy Moss were briefly teammates with the Vikings.
Yeah.
For like what, 2 games or 3 games? I forget what it was.
Didn't go very well.
Nah.
Yeah. Because Randy blew up in like a buffet line or whatever. I forget what it was.
Well, Favre was cooked by then too.
Yeah. So that one fell through. Then he ends up getting traded, and it came to a couple things: the contract, and then they thought they went to bed. Green Bay went to bed the night before thinking an agreement was done. A new contract he wanted to be literally called the number 1 receiver. That wasn't going to happen with Donald Driver, and that one kind of shit the bed. And then it was after New England, Green Bay needed another receiver. And at the time they had some injuries, and they actually had conversations, and it just never worked. And when New England ended up releasing them, but there was a conversation.
Ended up a Titan.
Yeah, they ended up having a conversation. Yeah. There's 3 times that he was close to being a Packer.
Mm.
Man, the 2007 season is the one I go back to, just because I can't imagine how does that season end if Favre has him in addition to Jennings, who ascended that year, obviously, and then Driver. I mean, Favre still probably throws a pick in a big spot because that's just kind of who he was. But Randy Moss is one of those dudes that is like, you just wish he was on your team. Like Julius Peppers was one of those dudes. I'm so thankful he played for the Packers just because of.
Yeah, he was a gift to you guys.
He was awesome.
C. Wood as well. Charles Woodson as well.
And that was like just basically dumb luck, essentially, because nobody wanted him. And then Woodson even tells the story of like when he came here, he's like, I didn't want to be here. Like I thought I wanted to be anywhere else. And he told his agent, like, Green Bay, what the hell did you sign with Green Bay for, essentially? And then he became the greatest defensive player in the modern era on this team, not named Reggie White.
Mm-hmm.
He the only other team that showed interest was Tampa, and they Gruden wanted to move him to free safety. And he was like, no, I'm a corner. I remember that. I remember then the blow up he had with McCarthy. And McCarthy basically told him, we'll cut you, but nobody wants you. Like straight up. And from that point on, they had a man-to-man meeting, and he became he was great with the Raiders. He was a freak athlete with the Raiders.
Yes.
He became a professional player and a professional athlete and the icon in Green Bay. And then he went and took what he learned in Green Bay and went to apply that to the Raiders for those final years. So he wanted to show them this is what it's like. This is how you become a professional athlete. This is how you act like a pro.
And one of the most iconic speeches, like part of that speech. So I have 2 spots. Yeah. So the one mind, one heartbeat thing. I have a custom Super Bowl ring from that year. I have one mind and one heartbeat engraved on that ring. And then my Packers tattoo from the Super Bowl that year. It says one purpose and one goal. So I still get goosebumps thinking about it. Like it was perfect. And like Woodson's like Jordan in the clutch against Utah in the finals, man. When he talks, he just doesn't, man. He's one of those dudes, like when you see him on TV, it's like, I'm not doing anything else. Like I am listening to this man talk. And he's one of those dudes, like when you read what he was saying, you read it and you hear it in his voice. Like he's phenomenal. And he's one of the best players, in my opinion, the greatest nickelback in the history of professional football. And you could tell me, I would even argue greatest cornerback. Give me Deion Sanders, give me Darrell Revis, give me whoever. As far as whether he's a Raider or a Packer, my guy Raider Rich is in here talking about that. I don't really care. He won a Super Bowl and a Defensive Player of the Year in Green Bay. So they don't give Hall of Fames to certain players, so I really don't give a shit. He was a Packer, and we were happy to have him.
He won a Super Bowl with y'all, so I mean, real recognizes real. But Charles, to me, I think he'll go down as the most complete corner because you think of guys who like can press, like shut down, take away the number one receiver ball. Charles was a true ball hawk. Charles, to me, like kind of reinvented the wheel in terms of that ball hawking corner. So,
and if you look at like the position he played on that Super Bowl team. This is why I give a lot of credit for that Super Bowl defense to Sam Shields, because his development to play outside corner allowed Dom Capers to slide him into the slot and do that blitzing off the edge and creating turnovers and doing some of the stuff that he was so good at throughout his tenure in Green Bay. And it was phenomenal. He was as good as they get in that time. And he was one of them dudes when they won the Super Bowl. Like, I'm kind of bummed that he didn't get a chance to finish that game. But watching him, you know, there's like iconic images from every championship that you watch your favorite win, obviously. Brett Favre holding his helmet up over his head in the Superdome. That's one. Reggie White, like running into the end zone and holding the trophy over his head. Yeah. But then there's Woodson holding the trophy in one hand and he's got a broken collarbone with the other one. You want to talk about somebody who, as a fan, give every single thing to your franchise to win you that championship. I mean, how do you not love Charles Woodson? And how can you not be romantic about football when you think about players like Charles Woodson?
I'm friends with Anthony Smith, who was on that team, the safety.
Yeah.
And Schmitty is a trip. I love him to death.
He was a Steeler at one point, wasn't he?
He won a ring with the Steelers and a ring with the
Packers. Yeah, Super Bowl 43, I believe. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or 40, one of those two.
And Schmitty was FaceTiming me from the banquet where they were getting their rings. And then he was like, and so we were talking, and he came to LA like a couple of days later, and me, him, and my brother Brack, we all went out to eat and kind of hung out. They're out there for the ESPYs. And I said, hey, what was said at halftime? I want to know Woodson's speech. He goes, Joe. He's like, real shit, bro. Everybody was crying, and we knew we were going to win because if we didn't, with one arm, Woodson was going to whoop our ass. and I was like, damn, like that's dope. So Schmitty, like, kind of like, I wish I knew word for word what it was. And I respect the locker room enough to, even if he told me, I would never tell it. But I think that's so dope. And I think to your guys' point about him, Woodson is a modern day era Deion Sanders because he can run, he's a ball hawk, he can return punts. We all know. But I love the fact that he was able to come up and stick you. He never shied away from the contact. At least with the Packers, he was, you know, and
he played receiver. He played a little bit of receiver too at Michigan.
No, yeah.
That's why he won the Heisman Trophy, if we're being honest. Like, if he doesn't play offense, he doesn't win the Heisman Trophy.
But you had Sticky Shields on one side.
Mm-hmm.
The other corner was Tramon Williams. So talk about coming full circle. Now Williams would be that guy to come in and help secure that from the slot if he were, you know, when he's able to sign. So Raider is somebody y'all love players. Look at this. Look at Rich. I can just pull it up. I can't help they like to come to Green Bay to come to win.
Well, hey, listen, he had to win a championship somewhere. It sure as hell wasn't going to be in Oakland. So
I blame Al Davis for that.
I'll say this: anytime you can give a 10-year, $100 million contract to an average coach that's been in the booth for the last 5 years, you got to do it.
Oh shit! I ain't saying that because
I got no love for John Gruden as a coach. So I've always thought, like, he won that Super Bowl with Tony Dungy's team, and
Simeon Rice. Simeon
and,
Rice even
and
let it be
basically
known
did
too.
nothing else.
Yeah. Other than give you that scowl.
Right. If he's not like if he's ugly and doesn't have those facial expressions, then does anybody give a shit about John Gruden? They just be like, no, he's a shitty coach.
Hey, let me tell you, okay?
Right.
Yeah.
We're the Raiders.
Spider 2 wide banana.
We're gonna rip Spider 2 wide banana straight up your ass. Okay. Let me tell you. We're a playoff team next year.
And I'll say this about John Gruden, because I remember when McCarthy was the coach here, there were plenty of Packer fans that wanted to do the same thing and fire McCarthy and bring him in. And I was like, absolutely not. What has John Gruden ever done on his own?
You know what?
Created Spider 2 wide banana.
No, I'm gonna say this, and I'm not gonna shit on Gruden or the Raiders.
I will.
What Gruden has done, he had legitimately has really reshaped that organization. Every year they've won more games than the year before since he's been there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's had to navigate through some very tough and tumultuous circumstances, from the move from Oakland to Vegas, and then even now with COVID. But everybody's had to deal with that. And he's really done a really good job of reshaping the culture. It's not what it was 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 6 years ago.
Well, when you think about it too, Joe, like, so people forget Gruden's first 2 seasons were 8-8 seasons, so it was a mix of good and bad. Year 3 though was the 12-4 team. That was the team that ended up losing to Baltimore in the AFC Championship game.
That's true. That's true.
So we'll see if that's the case. I don't know. I mean, they were one miracle away from being the Jets' first loss, or first win, excuse me. I just
in that 0 blitz.
God bless Greg Williams for that. I guess he did everything he could to get that organization Trevor Lawrence, and it still didn't work. So,
Well, they might get Justin Fields. No,
don't get me started with you. The Raiders. The Raiders also beat the Chiefs, and you got to give them credit for that.
And they may be the only team to do that.
Yeah,
with their starters and everything in.
Yeah,
I mean,
Week 17.
They certainly deserve some credit. I just know there are numbers that exist about John Gruden in December, and they're not very flattering.
I'm gonna have to hear those numbers. I'm gonna have to check those numbers out.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's an article for you, so I'll leave them alone. There's a free article for you. Look those numbers up. But John Gruden in December does not. The loss to Miami is not great. From this season, obviously, there's another game they lost in December this year that wasn't very good. They had the inside track to making the playoffs, and they didn't, in a year where everybody makes the fucking playoffs. Excuse me, but I hate the 17 playoff. I think you just reward mediocrity when you do that. And I know the Colts would have been 11-5 and missed the playoffs, but the Bears also would have been 8-8 and missed the playoffs. That's anybody who watched the Bears in the Saints game. Do the Bears belong in the playoffs?
They belong on Nickelodeon, but not the playoffs.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely not. They do not.
No. I'm glad the Bears made the playoffs because another year of Nagy and
the offensive genius.
Yeah, the offensive genius, Matt Nagy. Yes. So let's get back to the Green Bay Bucs now. Like I said, at first I was kind of a little nervous about the game, but the more I thought about it and really talking to Cam and starting reading inside some of the numbers, I'm starting to think this isn't going to be close. Like I'm really starting to feel that way. That really put me in they're probably going to come out and put a 40 burger on this team. And Green Bay hasn't given up more than 18 or 19, I think, in the last 3 games. I mean, it's just some crazy stat like that I read earlier today.
The defense played the most points they gave up in December was 24 to Detroit.
And not only that, how rusty, how road weary is Tampa Bay going to be? Because think about it. They traveled to Washington to open the playoffs. Then they traveled to New Orleans. Now they have to go all the way north to Green Bay, to your guys' place. I mean, three straight road trips, all those miles, it could add up.
That's hard. I mean, there's certainly that factor at play. I don't think the elements are going to play as huge of a factor as they'll be made out to, but Tom Brady's really the only one, and Ndamukong Suh to some degree, which Sue might be stomping on people's legs and claiming his shoes were cold, so he couldn't feel nothing. And maybe he'll stand on the quarterback's leg a little bit, and that's fine. They really, the Bucs, they really are a likable bunch, aren't they? Between Bruce Arians and Tom Brady and Antonio Brown and Sue and all those guys, they just got a bunch of likable dudes on that team, don't they?
Carlton Davis is starting to get on some bad sides now, so.
I struggle with this team. Whatever team they sign with is going to be public enemy number one.
Right. I'm going to bring this up involving Brady and legendary quarterbacks. So, Joe Montana's first season with the Chiefs, he takes the Chiefs to the AFC Championship game, but they get shellacked by the Bills. Brett Favre's first season with the Vikings, they go to the AFC Championship game, they lose in overtime. Brady.
It was one of the best days of my life.
Yeah, Brady's in his first year with the Bucs. He hasn't been in the AFC Championship game, but if past history tells us this is an L.
I dig that. I'll tell you this, to go to that Brett Favre story. I remember all year, there are a lot more Vikings fans in this area than I anticipated. And obviously you had some Packer fans that switched their allegiances, and I know who you are. I kept the receipts, so I know who you are. And we don't get to celebrate on Sunday when we win this game. That being said, all year, it was like, oh, thanks a lot for Favre, guys. Really appreciate you letting that dude walk. We got a Hall of Famer, and you just have Aaron Rodgers, who's just a Hall of Very Good kind of guy. Thanks for that. Appreciate it. And I just tell him, just wait, because I've watched this movie a million times, and I know exactly what's going to happen. He's going to go to a big game, and he's going to break your heart like he did mine every year from the time I turned like 9 until the last game I ever saw him play with the Packers when I was 16, which oddly enough is 13 years ago today. And I remember sitting in my buddy's basement just sobbing because I thought it was over and I thought it was never going to happen for us again. He's going to break your heart. And when he threw that interception, I don't talk a lot of shit to rival fans. I was all over it. I was like, I fucking told you. I told all of you.
You waited for that. You waited to open the can of worms.
And I could not wait for that to happen. And everybody was like, didn't you want your guy to win one more? I'm like, no, not for that team. If he had won one with the Jets, then like whatever. I mean, cool, but I don't do the NBA thing where I'm a Players fan. I'm green and yellow, man. If you cut me open, blood will come out and it'll be green and gold all the way, all day long. They could trade Aaron Rodgers tomorrow to the Buffalo Bills, and I will be rooting for Tim Boyle or Jordan Love. And that's just, I had it said to me, you root for the jersey, not the name on the back of it, because the players are going to change all the freaking time.
Yep.
And that's all it was. And Brett Favre was my hero. Like, I grew up, my first football memory is him running around the Superdome with his helmet above his head. I was hooked from that very moment. But Minnesota, the ultimate act of treason. And from then, I remember the jersey that's hanging out over here, I almost burned it. And my dad had to hide it from me because I wanted to light it on fire. He was like, you're not lighting this. You'll forgive him. Trust me. I was like, no, I fucking won't. No, I will not. I was an emotional teenager. I'm thankful I didn't, because I've gotten him to sign that for me and gotten it framed since then. But I've forgiven him, but I didn't forget either.
So people get older and mature.
Yeah.
I didn't, my mom was one of those where she wanted to burn her jersey. And I was like, how do you feel about it? It's the business of football. Like it's the business of football, because at the end of the day, like, he made a decision that he wanted to retire, or was helped to make a decision that he wanted to retire.
And this isn't obviously clarified, but I've been told before that when he retired, it was kind of like, okay, good, because we were ready to move on to Aaron Rodgers, and some of the players in the locker room were kind of tired of the whole Willie Woney thing. And all of that was just kind of a mess.
It's been well. I mean, I can tell the story now because I think Tauscher told it on his show with Wilde in the past. But at the end of the NFC Championship game in 08, or 07.
07-08 season.
Yeah. When after he came in there, and that's the Patriots were undefeated, and he says, look at it this way, guys. I got us on vacation 2 weeks earlier. And it was like, what? And Mark Tauscher had to be held back by teammates because they were going after him. That and his locker room was not even in the Packers locker room. It was in another room near the coach's office, I believe. So he didn't even get dressed with his teammates at that point. So he rubbed a lot of the team. I mean, he's the older guy in the room, other than maybe Clifton and Tauscher, kind of rubbed people the wrong way. And at that point, it was time to go. One thing I was told then was Mike McCarthy thought about benching him at halftime and putting in Aaron Rodgers.
And that's been reported by Mike Florio that he said at halftime that if that wasn't Brett Favre, I would bench his ass, which he may have said that in frustration, obviously, but still, I mean, they knew what they had with 12, and that is how you have the courage of your convictions. And that's something that I think it was Zach Cruz pointed out yesterday from the Packers Wire, that if Green Bay wins this championship, he hopes, and I agree with him, I hope Ted gets his due, because the foundation of this team, Brian Gutekunst did a lot of heavy lifting in terms of this roster, but you look at, name the star player. Joe, go ahead. Name the star players on this team.
Jair Alexander,
Gutekunst,
Aaron Rodgers,
Ted,
Elton Jenkins,
Goot,
Aaron Jones,
Ted,
Devontae
Adams, Ted,
Adams, Savage, Kenny Clark,
Ted. I mean, you get my point, right? Like the foundation of this team, Crosby. I mean, I know he's a kicker, but still.
But you got to have a clutch kicker.
Quarterback, left tackle, defensive tackle, all by Ted Thompson. Kevin King, who's okay, cornerback by Ted Thompson. I know he's not TJ Watt, but whatever. We'll get over that. A lot of really good players on this team, drafted and signed, mainly drafted by Ted Thompson. And a team that, I mean, yes, Gutekunst signs Adarius Smith. He signed Preston Smith. He drafted Rashawn Gary, who we made it an hour into the show and haven't even talked about him yet. He was the best defensive player on the field on Sunday.
Yeah.
Or Saturday, excuse me.
Jair, I thought,
Either one, that's
could go wrong with either one. Yeah,
either way, Rashawn Gary, but I mean, he drafted him. He drafted Darnell Savage. He signed Adrian Amos. Yes, Gutekunst deserves the majority of the credit. However, Ted Thompson, his fingerprints are still all over this team and this franchise still to this day, even though he hasn't been around for 3 years. And yes, when it was time, it was probably time for him to go a couple years earlier than that, but they didn't. And he was a really good GM for the Packers for 10 plus years.
At the owners' meetings about 4 years ago, when they approved the relocation, the Raiders relocation, I was there at the Biltmore in Arizona, in Phoenix. And at the end of the first night, it's on Mondays and they're done by Wednesday. The end of that first night, there's this huge, like, it's a mixer, but they have food. Like it's basically a buffet from everywhere, and you go wherever, and it's open bar. And everybody owners, GMs, head coaches, agents, everybody's there. Literally everybody's there. And it starts at like 6. So I, about 6:10, 6:15, I get down there a little, I wasn't staying at the Biltmore. So I kind of was hanging out, talking to other media guys, his friends. I left the bar and went out there, and there's Ted standing there by himself. So I go over to him. Hey, Ted. Start talking to him. Now, people in Green Bay know Ted Thompson doesn't talk to anybody. He's like, oh, hey. Yeah, how you doing? Nice to meet you.
I will know just to cut you real quick. My experience, I met Ted Thompson once. Well, more than once. I covered a draft that he was at, but I met him in an elevator once. And it's funny because I am just some random slapdick, and he's Ted Thompson, general manager of the greatest franchise in the history of the NFL. And Ted is the one who feels like he's uncomfortable, which describes him perfectly, right?
Well, it does. And I sat there and we ended up talking for like 20, 25 minutes. And it was just about ball. I didn't ask any questions like, hey, how come you did this or whatever. It was just talking ball, talking just about everything, right? And a Packer reporter, I'm not going to say who it is because he's still on the beat, comes over to me and goes, Joe, how the hell did you get Ted to fucking talk to you for 25 minutes. I've been covering them for X amount of like a few years. I haven't got 25 minutes in totality with them one-on-one. And you sat there. I go back to the line to get a drink, right? And Raiders fans are that guy Zini Abraham is right there. This fucking tinfoil head, tinfoil guy who is conspiracy theorist, right? Like he's just this total nerd, right? Like weirdo. And Zini sees me and walks away, and I'm getting a couple drinks. I look back, Ted goes, "Hey Joe, I'm still double fisted." He had 2 Bud Lights, and John Dorsey comes over and is like, "Joe, that's fucking Ted right there at his best." It was one of the funniest moments ever, and it was like
you got him out of the shell. You got him out of the shell.
Yeah, and it just 20 minutes. And it was just me and him bullshitting. It was the coolest thing in the world to me. And then later on, I was getting ready to leave, and I was saying goodbye to some Raider people, and I walked one way and I ran into Mike McCarthy, and he had his daughter with him. And Mike was pretty kind of low key, and I had on this tie, I was looking smooth, I had to look right. And Mike was like, "Hey, I like the tie." He's like, "You can wear that in Vegas." And we sat and talked for like 30 minutes, and then other people started to come over, and it was like, "Mike, I'm sorry." And he's like, "Nah, it's cool, dude. Like, don't even worry about it." Mike was totally cool with me that night. Well, he's always been cool with me, but totally cool. But the Ted Thompson thing made the trip like for me, because it was like, this is the man that I looked up to and I respect, just for a variety of reasons, on the field and off the field.
Joe, it's almost as if like you're having a convo with Greg Popovich, and Popovich goes from saying 4 or 5 words to actually having a legit conversation with you.
Shit. Right. If you seen the text that Jacob just sent me.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
Oh shit, that's great.
Oh boy.
But Ted Thompson, you're right. He deserves a lot of credit, and not just for that, but he really set a culture and a foundation. Now, I've always said this about there's certain types of general managers. You have different avenues to build a team. You have the draft, you have free agency, you have through trades, whatever way you can accumulate player acquisition. Ted was great at 2 of those. He was a great drafter. I don't care what anybody says. What he's done from receivers in the second round speaks for itself. And then when he dipped into free agency, he really didn't find too many busts. It wasn't like when Ron Wolf brought Joe Johnson over, or Mike
Sherman, but yeah,
Joe Johnson over, or or whatnot. But then in trades, Ted made some pretty shrewd trades. I mean, to bring he brought Corn Robinson over, and he filled a big need for them. I believe he brought Terry Glenn over as well.
That was Mike Sherman too.
But I'll give him credit for that. There are certain guys that Ted brought over but he didn't dip his hand into free agency. I think when Gutekunst, you see a guy that's using all the avenues. Ted would use 2, Gutekunst uses all 3. He's going to find ways, and we talked about it, last week. No one can say Green Bay's not going all in to win a Super Bowl this year when you're signing Jared Veldier, when you're signing Tramon Williams. A week, going into the NFC Championship game, going into the divisional game, you're shoring up what you think is weak spots because you have a great team everywhere else. And you want to ensure that you have the depth just in case somebody goes down.
Yeah, and you didn't even mention Snacks Harrison and just some of the things that they were in on Will Fuller. Like those are, I mean, I know they didn't make that deal, but and honestly, that turned out to be a good thing. Sometimes the best moves are the ones you don't make. I know obviously it's not like Gutekunst and company knew he was going to get popped for PEDs, but still, that's kind of the thing that Gutekunst gets credit for, is maybe some of the stuff that Ted Thompson didn't do. And those are the things I never asked Ted to do something like sign Zadarius and Preston and Billy Turner and Adrian Amos all on the same day. Now, obviously that is going to be a big part of the story of this team if Green Bay does end up winning the Super Bowl. And honestly, it's a big part of why this team has played in back-to-back NFC title games. That being said, those moves, like you mentioned, are the ones that Thompson just, for whatever reason, did. Like, for example, in 2016, when this team played for the NFC Championship, Ladarius Gunter should not be playing cornerback. Like they should be. I mean, it's easy to say that now. I can't tell you at the time who was available, anything like that, but there has to be somebody that you could bring in as a potential replacement for Gunter and to do some stuff like that. And those are things that Thompson just, for whatever reason, never did. He got a little too precious about his guys, his roster, whatever. And that's where criticism of him is valid. But I think the biggest, everybody says, well, he lucked into Aaron Rodgers. Well, one, he gets credit for drafting Aaron Rodgers when Brett Favre is already on the team. And two, to have the courage of his convictions to, yes, I know what they saw in practice, but it's different in practice as opposed to when live bullets are coming at you. To have the courage of his convictions to trade away a guy that everybody says was the Green Bay Packers. Like, I mean, I still remember the first promo that Fox did when they were like, I think that week they played the Lions. They're like, oh, Stafford and the Lions, Rodgers and the Packers. And I was like, what? Like, that's not normal. That wasn't normal for me to hear at that time, to hear that the quarterback was someone different than Brett Favre. And to have that courage, it's something that down the line, we'll see if Brian Gutekunst has that same courage of his convictions, albeit a completely different scenario, because the other thing that we kind of don't talk about is Brett Favre was terrible at the end of his career, save for that before that Renaissance season in 2007. His 2005 season is one of the worst I've ever seen a quarterback play. And if his name wasn't Brett Favre, he would have been benched in the middle of the season, but he was Brett Favre. 2006, think about it this way, guys. In 2006, Brett Favre threw 18 touchdowns to 18 picks. And we're like, oh, you know what? He's getting better. That wasn't bad. It's like, that's fucking terrible.
By Green Bay standards, that's terrible. Yeah. Jameis before Jameis.
I mean, yeah. I mean, obviously, yes. By Green Bay standards, it's terrible. But like, realistically, it's not like he was playing at a Hall of Fame quarterback level. He was playing average to below average to, in some cases, like that 05 season, like I mentioned. One of the biggest reasons the Packers went 4-12 the year that they did was because of Brett Favre and his poor play. So I think that
he got hurt that year, didn't he? And like he tried to, I mean, obviously played through it, but it may have been one of those where it's beneficial for him to sit out. And, you know, they probably would have won some games, but he had the Iron Man streak going. If I remember right.
I don't remember that, but that could have been. And I just think that, you know, obviously this situation with Gutekunst and Rodgers and Love is a little different because Rodgers now is playing at a legitimate MVP level and is one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. If he plays this way for 2 more seasons, he's not doing the Willie Woney thing that Favre was doing. He doesn't feel like he's bigger than the team. You know, by a lot of accounts, his teammates love him. You know, maybe not all of them, obviously, because if you have 53 guys who work with each other, not all of them are going to love that guy. But still, if all those guys love him and he's playing at an MVP level, you can't. I don't care who you drafted and when. You could have picked Jordan Love number 1 overall. Don't care. Like, you can't put him on the field without knowing.
So TQ brought this up to me on the franchise podcast last week. He was like, you're all the disparaging things you're saying about Rodgers last year. I said, no, I wasn't. I said, if he played like he did the last couple of years, in a couple of years, they probably are going to try to move on from him. It's the nature of that's having an honest, an honest assessment of somebody, you know, honestly. All right, Richie, I'll check you later, brother. You know, there's just so much of it that goes in, that there's so much that goes into it in terms of you have to be honest. You have to take out your emotion. Now, I told him, I said, hey, if Rodgers bounces back and has a great year, I mean, last year he had a really good year. And if the following year, next year, he has another good year, they're not going to play Jordan Love. They're not going to play him for 3-4 years. You know, I've said from the beginning that once Love was drafted, I felt it was the 4th year of his rookie contract. That's when you would see him on the field. And I think that's the final year of Aaron Rodgers' contract in Green Bay, if I remember correct. I could be wrong.
It's the first year that they can get out of his contract feasibly from a cap standpoint. So kind of.
It kind of, yeah, but it aligns was my point. That, and he gives you 2 years of, okay, you see what we have with Love, we can work something out with him. And then you still will get him hopefully in garbage time, and hopefully there's a preseason. So you have these things that you can see what you have in Love. And if you feel like he's not that guy, you can move on from him. And if Rodgers is still playing at a high level and you're ready to move on from Love, there's no harm, no foul, because that rookie contract is movable.
Right.
It's a win-win situation for Green Bay. I'd never really seen the big deal in why people were trying to think Green Bay's trying to push him out, because they didn't try to push Brett Favre out until Brett Favre was waffling on retiring or not for 2 or 3 years. It was towards the end of that, getting closer to the end of Rodgers' rookie deal. That's when they decided, okay, we're going to push Favre out.
Well, and you think about it, I mean, there's a lot of different factors with Jordan Love. Obviously, this year has a compromised offseason. There's conversations that next offseason might look the same way. That could be a factor that comes into play, in that we haven't really had a chance to see Jordan Love in albeit preseason action, but game action in the preseason. And we haven't had in-person practices with him outside of during the season, when obviously reps are limited, because you're not giving reps to Jordan Love if Aaron Rodgers is going to be your starting quarterback. And the other point that you made that I think was a good one is, if you watch with an honest eye last December, bad against Washington, bad against Chicago, not that great against Minnesota, not good at all against Detroit, pretty good against Seattle, bad against San Francisco. It wasn't unfeasible, because everybody now pulling receipts saying, oh, you guys thought Aaron Rodgers was washed. How stupid do you look? It's like, well, you know who else may have thought that Aaron Rodgers was starting to decline a little bit? The Green Bay Packers. Because when you trade up for a Utah State quarterback, that says something about how you feel. And this is a Zach Cruz thought process that he threw out there, but that says something about how you feel about your quarterback situation. They'll be happy to be proven wrong. And I think that that's something that this year, obviously, it has happened. They're going to give him the MVP award, most likely in the next couple of weeks. And he could be a Super Bowl champion and finish off maybe the greatest quarterback. If they finish off this season by beating Tampa Bay and Tom Brady and then Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs, this season is right up there with any season ever. And I know you mentioned that Rodgers had a really good season last year. Statistically, sure, he didn't turn the ball over a bunch, but the offense was clunky. And some of that is because of him.
Throws. I mean, there was times where I was frustrated. The missing wide open guys, still holding on the ball too long.
Which was the Tampa Bay game. I mean, that's a case of where he was holding the ball too long.
Yeah. And some of those habits do come back into play sometimes, and that's a legitimate concern with his game. But like I mentioned, if you watch last season, the only people that are like, no, Aaron's fine, it's everyone else's fault, are like the biggest of Aaron Rodgers homers, because yes, the talent last season was lacking to some degree, but he also played into that to some degree. And like I mentioned, you go back and watch those December games, Aaron Rodgers was not good. And there are some simple game management type of things where he wasn't good in those situations. And that's tough to think about. And I think that was at least part of, maybe not the whole, but part of what played into the selection of Jordan Love. And like I said, is it a slam dunk he's going to play for the Packers on draft night? If you'd asked me, I'd have said, yeah, they traded up for a quarterback. They're not going to have him not play. But if he's the MVP this season, and say he wins the MVP 2 seasons from now, and they've got a couple of championships after that, you're going to shove that out the door? I don't think they're going to do that just to prove that they were right about Jordan Love.
A Jimmy G type situation.
And like, here's the other thing. My guy Jake Morley brings this up all the time. Like, Jordan Love was picked 26th overall. It's not like he was picked first. It's not like he was ever thought he was going to be picked first. And Dayton Jones was picked 26th overall. Like, 26th overall picks can bust. 26th overall picks can just be like, whatever. Like, yes, they traded up for him. Is that process a good thing? Maybe not. But at the end of the day, if Green Bay wins the Super Bowl this season, do you care anymore? And if you do, then you have a severe problem. Like, you just want something to bitch about.
I seen Randy Moss talk about that on Saturday or Sunday. I happened to turn on the ESPN pregame show for whatever reason, and Moss had said that I think it was Brewski that asked him, "Well, are you going to bring up the receiver and taking Jordan Love and not getting a receiver?" And he goes, "They got to win a Super Bowl or get there, and then I'm going to shut up about it." Because you still got to get him some help at some point in the draft, which I agree with that last part. At some point in the draft, you probably could have got him some help. but it's at this point, why does it matter? Your team is finished the best record in the NFC. You're playing at home for the right to represent the NFC and going to the Super Bowl. Your quarterback is about to win his third MVP, putting together one of the best statistical seasons in league history.
And they have the highest ranked, highest scoring offense in the NFL. He's not throwing the ball to Devontae Adams on every single play. Like he's throwing.
He has other weapons. Tanya's become a weapon. Tanya's become a weapon.
Sure. And here's the thing. If Devontae Adams is Michael Jordan, do the Packers have Scottie Pippen in their pass catching group? No. They have like Ron Harper, or to use a Lakers reference, Derek Fisher. They have dudes like that.
Armstrong.
Yeah, plenty of guys like that. They have role player types in there. And that is where the criticism can be somewhat valid, because dudes like going into a game this week, if I asked you who's going to be the number 2 receiver, you're going to say you're kind of throwing a dart, right? Last week,
I'll say Lazard. I mean, honestly.
Sure, but there's plenty of opportunities to suggest that maybe that won't be the case. Maybe it'll be MBS. Maybe it'll be Tunyon. Maybe it'll be the running backs. Maybe it'll be somebody else. Maybe it'll be EQ. Who the hell knows? That's the thing. The one thing that Matt LaFleur has done a masterful job of since he's taken this job in Green Bay is basically said, again, to use basketball terms, I have LeBron James in Devontae Adams. He gets touches. And I have Anthony Davis and I have Aaron Jones. And he gets touches. And then after that, I find touches for KCP and Kyle Kuzma and all these other dudes. And we pick our spots with those dudes. But don't you want to emphasize your best players? Doesn't that make sense that your best players have the ball in their hands as much as possible? And if it was as simple as, well, what happens if a team takes Devontae Adams away? Nobody's done that all season long. Nobody has done that. If it were that simple, don't you think a defensive coordinator who's a hell of a lot smarter than I am would have figured that out by now?
Absolutely. And I look at this team, Rex Ryan, and I know Rex Ryan says a lot of, he puts his foot in his mouth. Yeah.
Oh, Jesus.
Sometimes other people's, but he said, but Rex said, this offense isn't just number 1 in the NFL. This is beyond being number 1 in the NFL. This is an historical offense. And you have Rodgers and Adams leading the way with a stable of running backs and a group of receivers that are very underrated. And I'll make this point. You ask who the number 2 is, or who's the Pippen to Adams Jordan. Nobody knew who Scottie Pippen was until a few years later. That, I think, is an Allen Lazard type. Lazard has all the physical traits to be an elite, maybe not the elite of the elite wide receivers, but to be that really good number 2. I mean, he's more than capable. He's the best, like you said, the best blocking receiver on the team. He runs good routes. He's got size. And I know he ran like a 4.6 at the combine. Nobody catches. I think he's been caught from behind once. I got seen him get caught from behind once. He's got more than enough speed to get vertical and go. I think he's got a legit shot to be a number 2. And then you have Tunyon, you have Mercedes Lewis, you have some of these other guys that can do a lot, and don't forget my guy that's on I always mispronounce his name. Out of Cincinnati, the tight end.
Josiah DeGuara.
That's
DeGuara.
When DeGuara comes back, oh my God, like that dude is a legit weapon. They have really good talent around him. And I think Green Bay's in a position where, what are you going to take away? Like Bill Belichick, this is what Bill Belichick does better than anybody. And Brady got that mentality from him being with him 20 years. What's the one person that you need to take away to win this game? Because I'm not going to, fucking Randy Moss, you're not going to beat me. You guys got to beat me. But I'm taking Randy Moss away. Who is that on this Green Bay team? Because like you guys said, no one's taking away Adams. You can take away the running game. Well, which running back? There's 3 of them. You're gonna play 8 in the box or 7 in the box. Poison. And you're going, 2. You got 2x1 or 3x1, and you're still gonna try to stop the running game.
Well, and if you do that, it's like Jamal Williams said to us once. He was laughing during the first Vikings game. He was like, they were flying up on the run game. He says, "Don't you realize we have Aaron Rodgers Like, he's going to throw the ball. So if you play that 8 in the box and try and stop the run that way, they'll just throw it over your head. And they've done that all season long. Like I said, I think what happened was we all have that picture stuck in our head, right? The 2011 Sports Illustrated cover where it was Donald Driver, Greg Jennings, Jermichael Finley, James Jones, Jordy Nelson, Randall Cobb. And we think like, okay, that's what a good receiving core looks like. And granted, like I mentioned, could Green Bay use an upgrade or two in their pass catching group? Yes. But everybody said all season long that this offense was going to run into some trouble once they faced a real defense. Well, they just blew up Jalen Ramsey and the Rams. Does that not count? If not, then, I mean, like I said, they've had the number one scoring offense all season. They have one outlier game against Tampa Bay. Outside of that, name a tough defense they've faced. Chicago blew them up twice. Indianapolis blew them up, and they didn't even play the third quarter again. They would have been better off not coming out of the locker room in the third quarter in Indianapolis. Put 31 on them, and it could have, like I said, if they play the third quarter, it's 40. Like, I just don't – I feel like national narratives, like they just get so ingrained into our head all season long, and it's like they read the depth chart and they go, who the hell is Alan Lazard? And they're like, okay, he can't be any good because I've never heard of him. And that's not the Randall Cobb to Jordy Nelson kind of thing. And do they need something like that? Sure. But you know what else they might be able to do is not have that, win a championship, and add to it.
Yeah.
All the more reason why I feel like Green Bay is the heavy favorite. All the more reason why I'm picking Green Bay, the top Tampa Bay, even if it's a shootout.
Lorenzo, give me a score.
I'm going to say 41-27.
I like that. That's not similar to what I'm thinking. What you got, Jake? If you had
I got it 34-24. I think that it'll be one of those games. I heard James Jones talking about it today. I think it was with Adam Shine, who, shout out, he's the best in the business. He's after you, of course, Joe. But I try, I thought that was good, but I don't remember if it was him or if he was talking to Chris Russo, one of the two. But he was saying, like, what are your thoughts on how – actually, no, I take that back. The one in between, he was talking to McAfee about it today and how he saw the game going. And he's like, I just think that Green Bay, it'll be close. They'll have a lead, and then in the fourth quarter, they'll kind of start to pull away. And that's kind of how I see this game going, too. It's kind of like that Rams game, a little back and forth. Green Bay builds a little bit of a lead. You start to get a little nervous. Is Tommy Boy going to make one of his – infamous comebacks, and then they'll just hit a play, make a play on defense, something like that. But I like 34-24. I think Green Bay wins, and we're going to party like it's 1996 all over again.
Speaking of 96, I'm glad that's a great segue. Oh my God. We're
spending too much time together.
All right. Bro, I've been outside of Sterling Sharp. I think the most egregious Packer not in the Hall of Fame is Leroy Butler.
Yes.
And Leroy's a finalist.
Yeah, he was nice.
And look, I can make the argument that Leroy changed the safety position when he came in. When he fully moved to safety, he could take away your tight end. He can blitz. He could pick you off. Leroy did it all. And you've seen a lot more safeties get into that. And then what pisses me off is you got a guy like John Lynch, who I think is overrated as a safety. He just was a headhunter. He didn't do it.
He was a linebacker playing safety, I think.
Right.
Steve Atwater, same way.
Yeah, same way. No disparity to them as they're both Hall of Famers. Congratulations. I think Lynch is up for it as well. But Leroy Butler should have been in the Hall of Fame a long time ago. And Leroy's up for it. I know they're on Thursday. I think they're discussing it. And him and Tom Flores are two guys that I'm really banging the table for publicly. I hope they get in.
Tom Flores, singer. Give the singer guy some love.
Singer California, yeah, Coach Flores. Those are the two guys that I think. Again, it's a travesty. What do you guys think about you guys kind of started to praise Leroy Butler. What do you guys think about Butler and his chances this year?
I like him. I think, I think that Pete Doherty's given his case, and he's as good as they get. He's the one who was a big part of getting Jerry Kramer into the Hall of Fame. When it comes to pitching that case, he did a really good job with Kramer, and Kramer should have been in 30 years before he got in, but whatever, better late than never. And I'm just thankful still that kind of like Kenny Stabler, I think it was Kenny Stabler, but didn't have to die to get into the Hall of Fame kind of thing. And he's able to witness that honor. Jerry Kramer is absolutely a Hall of Famer. One of the best players from that 60s Packers team, certainly deserved it. As far as Butler, I think the biggest trump card is right here. The Super Bowl 32 team. They're in the Super Bowl against the Denver Broncos. Mike Shanahan built his game plan on a defense with Reggie White around Leroy Butler. And that wasn't meant to be disrespectful to Reggie, obviously. It's just he built his game plan around Leroy Butler with Reggie White on the roster. And you mentioned changing the position, that ability to play deep. He comes up in the box. He moves all over the place. Fritz Shermer glows about him as far as his former, defensive coordinator. I know this doesn't really play into it a lot, but he invented the Lambeau leap. That certainly matters to me, at least, I think. But, I think that he certainly belongs in the Hall of Fame. He probably belonged in the Hall of Fame 5 years ago. But again, this will be a case of better late than never. And I think it could be a really good potential representation of the Packers in the Super Bowl if you have Butler and then Charles Woodson getting inducted and then Green Bay playing on Super Bowl Sunday.
Yeah.
You with that, Zoe, with Leroy Butler?
He deserves a spot. I don't know what his chances are considering the names like Peyton Manning, Charles Woodson, Tom Forrest has still been waiting, but I'm on board. I'm with you guys. I'm on board with Leroy Butler being in the Hall of Fame. And he did play a big part in that Super Bowl 31 run as well.
Big time. I want to try to get Leroy on. Because I think it'd be dope to have. I remember when he came out of Florida State. It was right after Buckley. And I think, hey, T-Buck flopped in Green Bay, but he had a very good NFL career, longevity-wise.
Yes, I get it. But I'm not old enough to remember Terrell Buckley, but I know the deal.
He was nice. Bro,
I love T-Buck coming out of, because I thought he was in Dion. I'm like, flash and corner. And then he gets to Green Bay, and it's like he's torched. But he's going against bigger receivers, and I get it.
Well, Terrell Buckley is the reason the Packers almost didn't draft Jair Alexander, right?
Yeah, because of the rule. Yeah.
The rule or the thresholds or whatever, and they broke that rule to draft Alexander. So thank you, Brian Gutekunst, for breaking. I understand why that rule's in place, obviously, but thank you for Alexander's been the best corner in his draft, obviously. So, and that's with all due respect to Denzel Ward and some of Minkah Fitzpatrick, even you can even argue that Alexander's maybe been the best player in that draft.
You see Joe flexing right now, right?
Joe's one of those guys. I got a question. If Jair ever leaves, is he going to be a Buffalo Bills fan or a Packers fan? But
I'm a Packer fan, bro. Like, no, that doesn't change. Look, I was a big Greg Jennings guy. The minute he left, that's it. Like, honestly, I don't buy players' jerseys too often. I don't buy, it's just if I'm not going to have them signed just because I understand the business side of it. But I got his jersey. That's just.
I'm more of a college football guy because at least you don't have to worry about guys getting traded. Their number is revered forever.
Transfer. Worry about them transferring because they transfer more than I change my underwear. Like I came into the season
thinking, there's no names on the jersey. That's what.
That's why when it comes to college, the only jerseys I buy are like legends. So Michigan jerseys I own are like Rashawn Gary, and I only bought that because he got drafted by the Packers. Charles Woodson. Tom Brady. I bought that to piss off my mom. And I might need to hide that one this week. And then what's the other one? Bernard Robinson.
You don't want to fix your team. Yeah, you gotta hide. You gotta put Brady in the back of the closet or something.
Well, it's a 10.
Or your hamper.
It could be anybody at this point, but yeah, Tom Brady is who that was when I bought it. And like I said, I asked for that for Christmas. My mom hates Tom Brady, maybe more than anyone in the world. Like if you gave her two bullets and said Tom Brady or Adolf Hitler, she would shoot Brady twice, kind of thing. Like that's just
wow.
And I'm not kidding. She cannot just say Tom Brady. Her middle name for him is the F word. So it's Tom effing Brady every time she says his name, and without fail. Like she can't even do it. She says it at work, like in a normal conversation, like, the Packers are playing fucking Brady this week.
Jacob, your mom's an OG. Your mom's
Yeah, she's awesome. I will never forget. So my mom, one of the reasons she hates him so much, she's a Peyton Manning fan, huge. And one of the biggest reasons she's a football fan is because of Peyton Manning. And we had a video, we don't have it anymore, of when the Broncos, it was Peyton's last year, and the Broncos beat the Patriots to go to that Super Bowl. And I just remember her screaming when Brady threw an interception to end that game. It was hilarious. And that's kind of the point I make as far as everybody said, "Oh, are you worried about Tom Brady?" My joke for the week has been, well, Tom has lost 3 championship games to Peyton Manning, so I guess he's used to losing to better quarterbacks in this game.
Yeah.
So my last thing for tonight. And I was talking with Cam Morrell yesterday. On the
Shout out to Kim. Shout out to Kim.
Big Cam fan. I said, you played against Manning, Breeze, Brady, Rodgers.
Oh, you're not going to hit me with this, are you?
I asked which one he thought was better.
Okay.
And I'll tell you the Manning story in a minute. He goes, Mahomes actually, from a just physical talent standpoint, is the most gifted quarterback I've seen.
I agree.
He said, but Aaron Rodgers is the best quarterback to ever play in the NFL. And he said, and I don't think it's as close as what people think. People equate Brady being the greatest because of Super Bowls. Rodgers and Brady have done a lot with talent. Sometimes teams that don't have as much talent as they should. But Rodgers' physical tools are superior to Brady's. And he's just as equally, he's equal or better with him on a mental aspect. And I was kind of surprised by that. He said Drew Brees maximized every ounce of athleticism and quarterback play from his body, and he respects the hell out of that. That Manning was just, it's Peyton Manning. Like, you have to deal with what Peyton Manning does. You can't show like 2 stories was like when Chicago played Indianapolis in the Super Bowl. Cam said, he was a safety on that roster. He said the whole defensive game plan was show cover 2 shell, but then you're running combo coverages. You're playing. You're at times going to man up. You're going to just wait, and you don't show it until it's 2 or 3 seconds left on the play clock because he's not going to be able to audible out of it. And he goes, I'll be damned, like he figured that out with under 10 seconds, sometimes 7 seconds. He already knew, just because a guy may have maybe a step or 2 over where he's supposed to be covering or where he's supposed to be at. I mean, Peyton knew instantly. The other story with Manning is when my brother played with Jacksonville. Same thing. They were going to come blitzing off the corner. My brother was a slot cornerback for the Jaguars at that time. It was year 4 of his NFL career. And he's in the slot. And it's a Thursday night game. I'll never forget it. And the play clock's running down. It gets to like 7. And my brother, and all week long it was, don't show anything. He happens to go, Manning audible out of it, knew he was coming just off a glance, just off like I was trying to read him. Because my head didn't move. It was just my eyes that moved. So I ended up texting him after the game, like, really? Manning got you? And he called me up. He's like, bro. And he told me the story. Like, he just made eye contact with me. It was like looking in Prince's eyes. Like, you knew. You just see this. Yeah. But I was somewhat surprised that Cam said Aaron Rodgers was the best quarterback to ever play the game. And he goes, Joe, I don't think it's as close as, if people want to be objective, it's not as close as what people think.
But I think another thing too, Joe, you got to remember, like, Cam got used to playing against Aaron Rodgers twice, whereas he didn't always play against Brady. So maybe there's that assessment. I can't speak for Cam, but maybe that's what it is.
No, but Cam played for the Dolphins as well, so we did play against them twice a year.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, when Randy Moss was a Patriot. Yeah,
when he mossed him in the end zone, which was
I don't mention that to Cam.
I do. Oh, I do. I said, bro, like, it was this fucking avatar on Twitter. Him going up and Randy Moss is going like this right over him. It's great. It's the opposite. Yeah, Cam is great.
Cam's a good dude. You'll like Cam when you get to know him, Jake. I know he's a bear, but you'll like him.
We all have our sins. All have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, right?
That's a fact.
I hold your ass.
That's a
So
fact.
are you going to ask the question?
Go ahead. What question is that?
You're asking who we think is better, don't you?
Oh, I'm not going to ask you guys that. I asked Cam that. I mean, if you want
That's what you're eating into.
No, actually, I wasn't. I actually wasn't going to.
Oh, you're just sharing a story. You're just sharing a story.
I was sharing the story that Cam thought the man over your left shoulder is the best quarterback there. This is a guy that's played against all of them, and I thought it was pretty. It was kind of eye opening to me. Not to take a shot at Rodgers by any means, because I think I can make that argument as well, because it's more than just Super Bowls. Like you said, Montana had a bunch of talent, and he had 5 Super Bowls. He had a bunch of talent. You got a 2 Hall of Fame receiver, a Hall of Fame receiver, arguably the greatest ever, one of the best tight ends, one of the best offensive lines. The running game was always good.
Coach that revolutionized offense in the NFL.
Yeah, West Coast offense. Yeah, Ronnie Lott in his prime.
Yeah, you had the defense, which was no slouch. And
no
then,
salary caps, so you can keep all them dudes.
Exactly. And then he goes, you look at Brady, like he just got used to doing certain things. So, he's with Belichick, and they did a great job of doing the things that they do to win games. And he goes, Peyton had physicals, but he was also limited. He's not going to run. He didn't have the arm Aaron has. Same thing with Drew. Drew, you could bat balls down or certain things. He's like, but with Aaron, you need a quarterback that can run. He can get out and run. You need the ball thrown accurately. There's nobody that's been more accurate. You need a guy really let one go and throw deep. Aaron can do that. A guy that get the line of scrimmage and change plays just like Peyton would. Aaron does and continues to do everything all those guys do. And he does it, and he's doing it at a superior level than everybody else. He goes, if Mahomes stays healthy, he thinks Mahomes could take that mantle eventually. He also said he didn't think Mahomes. He think it would be if he was Lamar Hunt, he would be the one to tell Andy Reid he's not playing, because you have $250 million wrapped up in him, and there's no way that what we seen on Sunday, he should be on the field a week later. When in baseball it takes 6 weeks to come back. In some cases with concussions. Football, which is way more physical, you're coming back in 7 days. Nah. And Cam's very vocal about safety.
I'll be interested. I think that all of those quarterbacks you mentioned, I think you just mentioned 3 of the top 5 ever, not including Mahomes obviously yet, because we got a ways to go on that. But I think that I can't remember who broke it down this way. Tom Brady, obviously the most accomplished quarterback ever. And at some point, like, it's not just dumb luck that they're always good and every team he's on is playing on championship Sunday. And something I hate Tom Brady, and I do. And I hate that I hate him because he's been as good as he has. But something about Tom that is admirable and respectable is just his willingness and his ability to just execute. And he executes better than maybe any quarterback in the history of the game. Just, you want me to throw it 5 yards of crack every time all game long? That's fine. I'm going to beat you that way. You need me to throw it 50 yards down the field? I'll do that too. Whatever it takes to win this game today, I'm going to do that. He's unflappable. I know we talk about like, oh, can you imagine if this quarterback yelled at his teammates on the sideline and stuff like that? But the thing about Brady is that when he was in New England, a game never felt like they weren't in control of it. And it feels kind of that way to some degree with Tampa Bay. A little less so because I don't have near the respect for Bruce Arians that I do for Bill Belichick. I don't have the respect for Bruce Arians that I do like John Gruden either. But, that's another topic for a different day.
Next week.
Yeah. Possibly, right? As for, everything else with him, I got to see him play in a Super Bowl when they were in Minnesota. And just when he walks on the field, there's a presence about him. And is he the greatest ever? I don't personally. Like, there's players that are more physically gifted, but his willingness to do what's there and to play the games a certain way and to just like never feel like you're out of it as long as he's there, that counts for something. Peyton Manning, I think, mastered the quarterback position maybe better than anyone's. That story you told is a great one. Like you said, a look of somebody's eyes was all he needed. And I'm a firm believer that if Peyton Manning played with Bill Belichick, that he would have 2 fists full of Super Bowl rings. He was that good. Physical talent. I've seen Aaron Rodgers play more than any quarterback in the history of the NFL. There are things he does that just aren't normal, and we've like desensitized ourselves to it as to what is normal now because of how good he's been for 15 years or 13 years, however long he's been the starter in Green Bay.
Well, I
And
mean, he's my age, so he's still up in his years. So
yeah, there you go. So I mean, just the ability that he has to throw on the run, drop dimes that way. You know, he does have some flaws in his game. He can be rattled, and when things aren't going well, you know, he does have that. I'm not playing body language police or whatever, but it's just kind of like it just kind of feels like the whole team kind of follows suit that way. Now he has gotten better with that under Matt LaFleur, but I think that there are some things about that in his game, and that could be a reason why they haven't won. I will say this: the next NFC Championship game that Aaron Rodgers plays well in will be the first one. And that's something they absolutely need from him this weekend because Rodgers cannot play the way he has in the last 4 NFC title games if Green Bay is going to win on Sunday. He's got to be in MVP form if they're going to win on Sunday. And I think he will be. I think that the Packers have all year long, I think they've exercised every demon in front of them. At the beginning of the year, it was they don't have enough weapons. How are they going to score any points? They have the number 1 offense in the NFL. Then it was they can't stop the run. Their defense stinks. They beat Derrick Henry. They crushed the Tennessee Titans. Their defense has gotten better all season long that way. Then it was, well, now they're facing the number 1 defense in the NFL, the NFC West, whether it was the Niners or the Seahawks or a team like that. They've given him fits in the past. Rolled up 500 yards on him last week. Now you're in the title game against your biggest adversary in terms of accomplishments. And the guy that you're like 1A with in the quote unquote GOAT debate, which is really just for idiots like us to sit here and talk about more than anything else. But one final demon to exercise, I think this is the perfect opportunity for him to do that. But as far as physical talent, arm talent, I think he's the best.
Storm clouds, like to me, it's like the clouds, the stars, they've all aligned for Aaron Rodgers and Green Bay. Another reason why that I'm riding with Green Bay this weekend. And I'll say this lastly, like I'll end by saying this. One thing that I've always respected out of Aaron is that deep down inside, when you really think about it, he has that scrapper edge. And here's the reason why. Joe, you might know this too. Aaron was very under recruited. Like even before the era of recruiting rankings and all that, Aaron wasn't even listed as the best quarterback in the state of California. I remember clearly the best quarterback in the state of California, his graduating class, which was my class, '02, was Ben Olsen, who ended up at BYU and then UCLA, but he never panned out. Aaron had to go the JUCO route. Then he gets the Cows is literally like his only offer, his only Power Five offer. And keep in mind, Cal was in the dumps. I mean, Cal had just brought in Jeff Tedford. They were fresh off of like a 1-10 season, so he had to elevate Cal to newer heights. And then, like you saw, like the debacle on the year that he was drafted, falling all the way to like number 24, number 25. But all that triggered Aaron, and it's developed his scrapper edge since then.
Aaron Rodgers at Cal. I was at the game at the Coliseum when they played USC.
Mm-hmm.
The only balls that were incompleted were balls that his receivers dropped that were in his hands. He played, it was the single best quarterback performance I have ever seen a college quarterback have. I mean, he was unflappable. And I knew at that point this guy is legit.
And if you think about it, when he was in college, you know, he played for Tedford. That was the conversation of can that throwing motion, can that translate to and that's one of the reasons, not the only reason, but that's one of the reasons he dropped as far as he did in the draft was his throwing motion. In Green Bay, if you look at highlights from Rodgers' first preseason as a professional, he looks like 2 completely different players. You can see his ability and his arm talent and his athleticism and all that stuff, but it doesn't even look like the same guy. So credit to, Mike McCarthy, his quarterback school, and really the Packers org as a whole to kind of rebuild him from the ground up.
You also see that with Jordan Love from his first few practices that everybody was filming to what they've shown recently. It's night and day. And the night before Aaron's draft, I was coaching on a semi-pro football team. I was the OC for this team, and I was with the head coach and the D coordinator. And the next day was like the tryouts. And I said, look, I'm not going to be there till after Green Bay drafts in the first round. And like, all right. And they go, who you got? And my phone started ringing, and I was getting calls, and I still had people inside 1265 at the time. And they're like, what do you know about this Cal quarterback? And I'm like, Rodgers is legit. He's going to slide to us, and we're going to take him. Don't report it, but like, all right. And so I'm at my boy's house, and he said, yo, like, Mark goes, who are you going to take? And I'm like, if I'm picking one, I'm taking Aaron Rodgers over Alex Smith. I'm not a believer in Alex Smith. I think he's going to take more to develop. I'm taking Rodgers. I go, but he's going to slide to Green Bay. Oh, you're full of shit. You don't know. All right. Next day, I come to practice, and we had bet dinner for that night. So where we lived, there wasn't a lot of great places to eat. So, like, I think Applebee's was like the big deal.
So it's like Green Bay.
It was, yeah. Yucca Valley.
That's the old. That's the old Ryan Longwell joke. When when Longwell left Green Bay for Minnesota, his wife kind of made a comment about how a place to have a nice dinner in Green Bay was Applebee's. It's changed since then. For those of you that don't know.
Well, Lorenzo's by the beach, so I don't know why he's complaining.
Well, Santa Maria has like not very many options, but I could go 20-25 minutes to the beach and get like Shelby Brewhouse or McClintock's.
Yeah, there you go. Well, so I kind of practice, and I'm smiling. They go, what? And I said, Green Bay drafted Rodgers. Bullshit. All right, we're going to Applebee's after we're done here. Cool. We go there, and it comes across ticker. Green Bay took Aaron Rodgers. They're like, man, I'm ordering me a steak. I'm getting me my beers. Like the both of you guys. Him and the other guys happen to be named Joe too, and it was phenomenal. I feel like this. What Brady has done is he's had a lot of important moments in NFL history, and he's had some things. He's had a coach that knows the rule book front, back, side to side, and knows how to get away with some things. But he's also made some big plays. Manning, I again was just masterful back there. He was just different. But if I need to go through the history of the NFL, and I need to start a franchise and choose out of the quarterbacks that's there, the all-time quarterbacks, and excluding the younger guys today, Aaron Rodgers would be my number one guy. He'd be my number one pick. If without any disrespect to John Elway or Dan Marino or anybody else, because those guys get overlooked, often. More so Marino than Elway.
Especially the further we get from when they played.
Yeah.
I know.
Rodgers would be my guy just because he can do everything they did and he does it a little bit better. So, But with that being said, guys, that's it for tonight. Green Bay plays Tampa Bay. They go to Lambeau. Hopefully it's going to be snowing. No, sorry, Jake. I know you're going to be there, but hopefully.
Oh, I'm with it. I don't give a shit. I found out today.
You're used to it, right?
Yeah, they were going to give me Friday. So I had to work Monday, and one of our company holidays is Martin Luther King Day. And so they said for work, one of us has to work Monday and one of us has to work Friday. And I was like, well, I'll work Monday. So at Friday, in case I needed to drive up to Green Bay and get COVID tested. And since I had it in November, I don't. So I don't have to drive up there. So I asked them today, are you okay if I work Friday and take Monday off? Because if Green Bay wins,
I'm FaceTime. Oh, I can't FaceTime you anymore.
If Green Bay wins, here's the Charles Woodson whiskey. This baby's getting a workout. So we have a little bit of our group from Game On Wisconsin coming up to Green Bay. We're going to have a little celebration, a little party with some of our group coming up to celebrate when my guy Jason's flying in from Arizona just for the game.
See, I should have freaking kind of taken a flu out.
Grat, man, you can still fly. You can't get in the game. Jason's not going to the game, but I'm sure he'd sit there and watch it with you.
That may be. I'm gonna see how much they run. If I can, I will.
I was going to say, I'm sure you can find something because I think just to be in Green Bay, the potential. I mean, obviously, something else. I said this tonight on IOC was, I've already got it marked in my head. Right, is like happiest days of my life: 9/18/19, the day my daughter was born; 10/14/18, the day I got married; February 6, 2011, the day the Packers won the Super Bowl. 1/24/2021. If I'm in Green Bay when the Packers beat the Bucs to go to the Super Bowl, it's right there. Like there's no question. So the atmosphere there's going to be great. If you can come out, man, we can have a party.
I mean, I just may. I got to
bring your mask, wash your hands. Obviously, we'll do everything safely, but
always. But that's us. Follow Game On Wisconsin. That is my favorite place to go get any Packer information. They have great shows led by the guy right there, Jacob Westendorf. Follow him. You see his Twitter handle on his name. My guy Lorenzo, Reyna, FSM, Zoe Huddle. He's got some good ones. And if you get a chance, go read Mismatches and Miscommunication. He talks about what went wrong on certain plays this week on FSM.
It's chess, not checkers. All right, remember that. It's chess, not checkers.
Yeah, and great line from Training Day. He used that.
What a great movie.
Oh, that
loved it too. Yeah.
So Gus, we did talk a movie. We talked Training Day real quick. And then
has Denzel Washington made a bad movie?
He could take the sorry script and make it Oscar worthy because he's Denzel.
I was gonna say, if he has, I haven't seen it.
Same here.
I don't think so. And I still say he should have won an Oscar for his portrayal of Malcolm X, but that's a whole different But with that being said, One Night in Miami, if you have a chance to see it, man, best movie I've watched in the last probably 5 years. It is
monster movie.
Wow, it's great.
Monster movie.
But with all that being said, thank you for joining the Franchise Night. Follow us on all social media, from Facebook to Twitter to Instagram, and of course, subscribe to the YouTube page. Subscribe to the Game On Wisconsin YouTube page as well. That's LJ Reyna. That's Jacob Westendorf. I'm Joe Arrigo. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll talk to you soon. Go